welcome to the midday news on 3FM 92.7. Coming up, Supreme Court declares political parties' delegates-based candidate selection system unconstitutional, orders parties to adopt universal membership voting within 1 year. Meanwhile, the Apex Court has also unanimously dismissed the case challenging the prosecutorial powers of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Later in the bulletin, Ashanti Health Directorate raises alarm as estimated 500,000 people live with chronic hepatitis B, many unaware of their status. Details of these and more in the next 30 minutes. My name is Grace Hamwajiman. Stay with us. Many thanks for joining us. Let's begin the bulletin from here. And the Supreme Court has unanimously upheld the constitutionality of the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act, allowing the Anti-Corruption Agency to continue investigating and prosecuting corruption-related offences. The court, however, ruled that the Attorney General retains a constitutional authority to discontinue criminal prosecutions initiated by the OSP under Article 88 of the Constitution. The substantive suit was filed by private citizen Noah Adamte against the Attorney General, questioning the constitutionality of the OSP's power to independently institute criminal prosecutions without prior authorization from the Attorney General. The plaintiff argued that Article 88 of the Constitution exclusively vests prosecutorial powers in the AG and that Parliament could not, through an ordinary act of Parliament, confer similar powers on another institution without first amending the Constitution. The ruling affirms the legal basis for the Office of the Special Prosecutor, while clarifying that its prosecutorial powers remain subject to the Attorney General's constitutional powers. Our court correspondent, Sistus Don Ulo, is joining us shortly with details of this landmark judgment. Sistus, thank you for joining us. Talk to us about this ruling by the Supreme Court. Sisters, if you can hear me, talk to us about this ruling by the Apex Court. We're working the phone to bring in our court correspondent, Sisters Don Ilo. When we're able to connect with him, we'll bring you details of that. But this is what the ruling from the High Court says. It says, Noah Adamte had argued that Parliament could not create another institution with prosecutorial powers without first amending the Constitution because Article 88 places criminal prosecutions under the authority of the AG. And so that was what the court stood on to make the decision. But let's bring in Sister Don Ilo again. Sisters, can you hear me? Talk to us about what the Supreme Court has been saying in relation to this ruling.
Yes, Grace. The Supreme Court has made a very important decision today, and that decision will affect the prosecutions that relate to corruption and anti-corruption cases. As we have heard from the Supreme Court, the establishing law of the Office of the Special Prosecutor does not in the Constitution 1992. That means that the provisions of law, particularly Section 3 and 4, which a few months back, a couple of months, created some confusion in the prosecution of some of the high political cases that we were following in the country. Those two provisions brought up an issue whether or not the special prosecutor had the authority to initiate those prosecutions without permission from the Attorney General. The Supreme Court says that yes, the Office of the Special Prosecutor has the mandate in tandem with its establishment law to prosecute all corruption and corruption-related cases. That is number one. However, number two, in doing so, the Attorney General has some sort of oversight in the cases that the prosecute. And that oversight is exercised through what we call knowledge falsified. That is to say that the Attorney General can, at any point within the prosecution, discontinue that particular prosecution, albeit handled by the special prosecutor. So that is the point that we are seeing, for lack of a better expression. That means that the special prosecutor can start a case, but in the course of that particular case, then the Attorney General will discontinue that particular case that the special prosecutor is running.
Right.
And the most important thing from the Supreme Court today is that all the cases that were started by the Office of the Special Prosecutor before the introduction of this particular case, those cases remain valid.
Right.
They remain lawful prosecution and will be prosecuted. They are not affected by the restrictions that we had to do from the Supreme Court.
Okay.
The difference is that going forward, any other case that the OSP would be distributing,
the AG can come in through a nolle prosequi.
The influence,
right.
The conviction, that's a better way. The conviction of the images. Great.
Sisters, thank you for bringing us those updates. Sisters Don Ulo, my colleague at the Supreme Court, updating us on that breaking news ruling that has just come in. Let us also bring in private legal practitioner Christian Mam Hesse. Counsel, thank you for your time on the bulletin. What does this really mean as far as the independence of the OSP is concerned?
Yes, good afternoon to you and your listeners. I mean, for some of us, we had maintained that the ambiguity is not there. And I remember on Mr. Okansi's show, the Saturday show, where I submitted that the position of the OSP Act indeed is not independent. The OSP, the powers of the OSP were carved out from the Attorney General. And if there is anything more to do, there must be an amendment of the Constitution. And that has been the position of some of us. But I mean, for any kind of confusion in the mind of one, the matter must always be safe for the Supreme Court to carry out its interpretation of same. And so this is what the Supreme Court has come up with. So basically, as I just sum everything up to say, it's about if we are interested in the fight against corruption, then attempts must be made to amend the Constitution in respect to Article 88, which gives all powers in terms of procedural powers to the Attorney General acting on behalf of the state. And so that where we believe that the OSP must act on its own without recourse to the Attorney General, then so be it if the amendment spells that out.
Right.
So as far as we are concerned, this is it, and it had never been ambiguous to some of us. But I mean, to advance the jurisprudence of law, they have to go to the Supreme Court for that interpretation to be done. The only thing is that the current situation, as the Supreme Court had opined, would create a kind of check and balance, so that the OSP will not have any excesses, and the Attorney General would have the power to exercise nolle prosequi when necessary. And again, given that unique powers that the Attorney General has, depending on the political actor, because that position is a political position, you do not also know what might influence any learned Attorney General at any point in time, because occupying that position is a continuum. So government will come, government will go. So depending on who occupies it, that person might decide to use it countermeasure to the actions and inactions of the OSP.
Council,
So
you describe it
as
a case of checks and balances, but people also, there's a school of thought that says that maybe this could lead to a subtle legal battle between the OSP and the AG. I mean, the point in case is what just happened with the Kenofriata case, where the OSP says we have received some dockets, AG says we don't, and all of that. You don't think so?
Yes. So the basic principle that I have established is the checks and balance. And moving beyond it is what I'm saying, that at the heart of that checks and balance, depending on the political actor, the arbitrariness may exist to suggest that, I mean, because it is in the confines of politics, whoever the Attorney General may be might decide that, you want to prosecute our people, we will not allow you to do it. You might prosecute this person or prosecute that person. That will go. This particular person, it will not fly, and all of that. When that happens, what comes of the corruption fight? The corruption fight will be undermined. It will be defeated, and that whole process will be frustrated. So yes, the checks and balance, that principle is there. But indeed, if we want the independence of the OSP, then amendment is the way, not the current situation. The current situation is only interim until Parliament does something about it. This would be the situation. And when it has to do with the Constitution, then the processes required to make constitutional amendments also avails under the Constitution. Then that must also be fested so that that is realized. Until anything of these constitutional amendments happen, this is going to be the position of the law.
Right. Counsel, thank you for talking to us this afternoon. We've been speaking with legal practitioner Ma'am Hesse, talking to us about that decision by the Supreme Court on the powers of the OSP to prosecute. Now, still at the Supreme Court, the Apex Court has, in a majority decision of 5-2, declared the delegate system unconstitutional and has directed political parties to, within a year, puts measures in place to allow all members in good standing to be able to vote. Former Minister of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, Professor Kwabena Frimpong-Boateng, veteran politician Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, and former Education Minister Dr. Christine Amakuniyama filed a suit at the Supreme Court challenging the constitutionality of the delegate-based systems used by Ghana's major political parties to elect their presidential and parliamentary candidates. The three plaintiffs were seeking constitutional declarations against the NPP, NDC, and CPP, arguing that the parties' internal electoral arrangement materially disenfranchise ordinary party members and violates the democratic principles entrenched in the 1992 Constitution. The decision of the Apex Court effectively scraps delegate system practice by political parties in determining leaders of the parties and presidential candidates. Let's bring in Dr. Jonathan Asante, a political analyst. Doc, thank you for your time on the Bulletin. Has this ruling created a bigger problem rather than curing it?
Well, if you look at it from where you are coming from, it does. It imposes a huge administrative cost on the various political parties, and I believe that it is even going to further marginalize the minority parties who do not have the wherewithal or the resources, as it were, to conduct such, expanded versions, of delegate elections. Whichever you look at it, anyone who is qualified to vote, as it were, in the primaries is a delegate. It doesn't matter whether the person is an executive or not. As long as they have created that kind of expanded version, obviously that person then becomes a delegate because that person is qualified, as it were, to take part in the voting process. That being said, because of the problems associated with the current delegate system,
right?
I was for the current delegate system. It is just that the issue of corruption, which the Supreme Court intended to cure, and the fact that there were some general electorate who felt that, well, this person that you have brought us to vote for parliamentary or presidential, is not somebody that we thought, we're going to vote for, and that person is not popular. Therefore, you guys have gone out there to take fridges, what's it called, television sets, you've taken dollars and other things. If that is the case, then you people should go and vote for that person, for the person to win. So as a way of curing this particular mischief and then the corruption that, had riddled this particular process, I believe that the Supreme Court, being a member of the society, might have looked at the sentiment expressed by the people to take this particular decision. But the practicality in itself is something that it is changing my position. It is just like...
Doc, so I'll come to you first to talk about the practicality of this, especially in the 1 year timeline. But do you think this sufficiently resolves the issue of vote buying?
It does not. It does not. It is just a matter of deciding to, take a certain percentage of the delegate, and then you bribe them along the path, and then leave the other percentage to the rest of your compeers or the competitors. It does not. You see, in actual fact, if the politician is not ready to give, the delegate who is the receiver cannot have it. That is all. And if we think that people will have traveled far and wide to get to a particular place to take part in the processes, of course, the person must have believed in the philosophy of the party to say that I want to be a delegate of the party, not because of what he intends to benefit from.
The goodies I'll get.
That is very wrong. So if we cannot in any way ensure that the politician does not dole out something to the delegate, then I suggested that they ought to have taken the process through the party itself, so that you will have the election committee, devoid of people who have interest. And then the money would have been given to them to be given to the delegate as your transportation, so that you do not receive 5 different transportation in envelopes. It doesn't work like that anywhere. So the Supreme Court intends to cure a particular mischief. You see the point? So it is a problem. It is a problem. It's whenever we invite the Supreme Court into issues that are of partisan nature, we create problems for the Supreme Court. A case in point can be said of how, I think before 2024 elections, where it had been clearly spelled out in the constitution of the party and then parliamentary processes itself, that if you decide to go as an independent candidate, you forfeit. It is clear. But when it was not favoring a particular party, that is the MPP, somebody went out to the Supreme Court to seek a different interpretation. And you see how they embroiled the Supreme Court in some of these partisan disgrace and shamefulness. And so it is not good that we invite the Supreme Court into things of that nature. Right. In as much as the delegate system, is embroiled in corruption, of which everybody has condemned, I don't think that this is going to cure that particular problem. As long as there is a giver, there is definitely going to be a receiver.
Doc, and then the parties have a 1 year timeline to implement this. We know that the 2 political parties have some elections coming up briefly. How do we see this ruling play out in the face of the elections coming up? And then how do we also see the implementation happen effectively in this 1 year timeline?
Well, that timeline in itself is another problematic thing. If you look at it carefully and from a cynical perspective, you will see that it may favor the MPP more than the NDC. The MPP has already done their presidential primaries, as if they knew that something of that sort was going to come up. I don't know. Secondly, they are doing the internal elections, for the branch or the constituency.
Executives.
They have their own problems, and then they are moving forward to the regional and then obviously to the national. So they may escape it. But then that cannot be said of the NDC. The NDC internal elections, they may also be able to escape, the branch, constituency, regional, and national, but probably not the presidential. Besides, 1 year, is it 1 year after the judgment has been given, or there is a particular period where the Supreme Court has said that this is the 1 year as far as our judgment is concerned? That in itself is also open to a certain interpretation.
Right. Doc, thank you so much for talking to us. We have been speaking with Dr. Jonathan Asante. He is a political analyst. This is the midday news on 3FM 92.7. Let's move away from the courts. And the Ghana Grid Company Limited, GridCo, says engineers are working around the clock to restore electricity after a major system disturbance triggered widespread power outages across parts of the country in the early hours of today. According to GridCo, the disturbance occurred at about 3:11 a.m., causing the simultaneous shutdown of a number of power generating plants connected to the National Interconnected Transmission System. The cascading fault disrupted electricity supply across several areas. GridCo says it's immediately activated its system restoration procedures with engineers and system operators collaborating with other stakeholders in the power sector to restore supply as quickly and safely as possible. Corporate Communications Manager at GridCo, Jifa Bampo, says a technical investigation to determine the cause of the disturbance is underway.
We'd like to apologize for this incident. It's a rare one, not one that occurs often, and so we sincerely apologize for everyone who is impacted, whether they're a consumer or a business owner. Currently, we know that restoration is ongoing. It's been ongoing since the early dawn. We've picked some load, I understand, from the Akosombo generating station. There's the need, obviously, to pick more load. And so that work is ongoing. Efforts are underway. So the system control center is working with our partner stations, like our substations across the country. We have about 68 of them. And we're also working with the generating stations to restore them, bring them on stream as soon as possible so that we can supply bulk power to ECG, and then ECG can onward distribute nationwide. So it's a painstaking process. There are protocols required to do this work, and we urge the public to have some patience for us whilst the engineers do this work, which is currently ongoing. And once again, we sincerely apologize for what has occurred. I don't have the full details of how wide, but based on the information we've gathered, it's widespread. It's more beyond us here in Accra.
That was Director of Communications for GridCo, Jifa Bampo there. Now, the Ashanti Regional Health Directorate is warning that an estimated 500,000 people in the region are living with chronic hepatitis B, with many unaware they are infected. Health authorities say the silent nature of the disease is putting more lives at risk and is urging the public to go for early screening and vaccination. There's more in this report.
For many people living with hepatitis B, there may be no obvious warning signs. But health authorities say behind the silence is a disease that can lead to serious complications, including liver cancer. And in the Ashanti region, the scale of the problem is raising concern. Dr. Fred Bulletin is the Regional Director of Ghana Health Services.
When we come to Ashanti region, it's estimated at least about 500,000 people are living with chronic hepatitis B. The issue that we are having, the challenge, that most of these people do not even know their status. That is the challenge. And then this also juxtaposed with a long incubation period. When somebody is having hepatitis, it will take at least about 1 to 4 months. In some cases, it's more than even 4 months before they start showing signs and symptoms of hepatitis B. So it means that it's important that at least we have ways of addressing and picking it.
Dr. Bulletin is therefore calling for aggressive screening, vaccination, and early linkage to treatment.
The first thing that we do as a service, Ghana Health Service, every pregnant woman is screened, because that is one of the leading causes of transmission from mother to childhood during childbirth or during breastfeeding. The second one that we do is that before a child is 1 year, they are vaccinated with hepatitis B, because that's, if you're able to do that for almost every population of a cohort, following that, we believe that hepatitis B will be eliminated. It's not only enough to pick people who have the problem, but not link them to care. And the Ghana Health Service is also making ways that all these treatments will be affordable when it comes to people who are having the problem.
The district chief executive for
eliminated.
Adansi North,
It's not only
Charles
enough
Kofi,
to pick people who
also
have the
called on
problem,
the public
but not
to
link
take
them to
personal
care.
responsibility
And
for their health. Also called on the public to take
the health sector because in the district and also economically it also has a burden on the district. Stresses the health in the sector in the district economically has a burden on the district.
For health authorities, the message is simple. Know your status, get vaccinated where eligible, and seek care early.
And that is it. Know your status, get vaccination where eligible, and seek care early. Let's go to Parliament before we take leave of you, because the House has passed the Excise Bill 2026, which seeks to abolish excise taxes on locally manufactured fruit juices. The legislation provides a framework for the imposition and collection of excise duty on selected imported and locally manufactured excisable goods. It also makes provision for the excise tax stamp and the requirement for such stamps to be affixed to excisable product. Deputy Finance Minister Thomas Nyako Ampem outlined the key objectives of the bill on the floor of Parliament.
The other thing we are seeking to do is to introduce a sliding scale for use of raw materials so that we can encourage the use of local raw materials in the manufacture of beer and other drinks so that the more raw materials you source locally to produce, the rate of excise duty goes down. That is also being maintained in this bill. We are removing taxes on juices, local juice that are produced here. And so our Blue Skies, a Kumfi juice factory will all be zero rated. And that will bring the prices low, and it will encourage us to shift from the consumption of alcohol to fruit juices because we want to promote good health.
Deputy Finance Minister Dakwampim there. Well, this week when I spoke to the Federation of Beverages Manufacturers, they said that they are also looking forward to reducing the cost of your favorite fruit juice. And so you know what to do. Hopefully by November they tell us the cost of your favorite fruit juice, locally produced, is going down and you can keep enjoying them. That is how we end the midday news on 3FM 92.7. It came to you live from our studios here at Adesawe Kanda, Accra. My name is Grace Hamwa Ajiman. Bismarck Ewusa is standing by to bring us the latest in the world of business. Don't go away. Stay with us.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Business Daily on 3FM 92.7. Coming up, Fitch Solutions forecasts inflation to climb to 9% by end of 2026 as CD weakens, while government stands by 5% year-end target. We'll hear from the UK firm's Associate Director, Mike Kreiniger.
Imported price pressures will become more pronounced, and that's going to push inflation higher, overtaking the Bank of Ghana's target range in early 2027.
Also ahead, finance expert Joe Jackson warns political pressure and overspending could derail Ghana's post-IMF economic gains.
Encourage the private sector to do the investment to create the jobs, to do the investment to grow the economy, to do the investment to keep our cedi stable and interest rates low.
Plus, Parliament approves Excise Bill 2026, abolishes excise duty on locally produced fruit juices, and introduces incentive-based tax system to promote local raw materials, agro-processing, and healthier consumer choices.
The other thing we are seeking to do is to introduce a sliding scale for use of raw materials so that we can encourage the use of local raw materials in the manufacture of beer and other drinks.
Ahead, we'll hear from Deputy Finance Minister Thomas Nyako Ampim. We'll bring you details of our headlines and other stories shortly. Please stay. Thanks for your company. Now to the details. Global research firm Fitch Solutions is projecting a rebound in Ghana's inflation in the months ahead, forecasting it will end 2026 at 9%, well above the government's 5% target. The firm attributes the expected rise to a weakening cedi, even as it maintains a positive outlook for Ghana's economic growth and fiscal performance. There is more in the following 3 Business News Desk report. Fitch Solutions, the research arm of global ratings agency Fitch, is forecasting that Ghana's inflation will rise to 9% by the end of 2026, citing an expected depreciation of the cedi in the coming months. Associate Director Mike Kruniger says the recent sharp decline in inflation was largely supported by the cedi's strong performance, but that trend is unlikely to continue following the Bank of Ghana's latest policy stance.
The cedi is now weaker year on year. Now, what this means is that imported price pressures will become more pronounced, and that's going to push inflation higher, overtaking the Bank of Ghana's target range in early 2027, and also reinforcing our view that economic growth is going to cool a little bit next year.
The forecast is significantly above the Finance Ministry's projection of 5% inflation by year end. However, technical advisor at the ministry, Dr. Theo Champo, insists government remains confident inflation will finish the year within its target range of 8% plus or minus 2 percentage points, supported by prudent fiscal management and disciplined public spending.
We have no cause to believe that inflation, even if conflict escalates further in the Middle East, would end the year going above the band. We've done quite a lot of work around that.
Looking beyond this year, Fitch Solutions expects inflation to rise further to 13.2% in 2027 on the back of stronger domestic demand, imported inflation from a weaker cedi, and higher food prices linked to El Nino weather conditions. Despite the inflation outlook, the firm remains optimistic about Ghana's economy, projecting growth of 5.7% this year, driven by resilient domestic demand, strong mining activity, and high gold prices, while describing government's fiscal consolidation program as broadly credible. And that was a report on Fitch Solutions forecasting inflation to climb to 9% by the end of 2026 as the cedi weakens. Now, Chief Executive of Delegate Finance, Joe Jackson, has urged government to allow the private sector to flourish and lead Ghana's economic transformation. He cautions that the country's new 36-month non-bailout policy coordination instrument, PCI, with the IMF faces serious political risk. Speaking to 3 Business following the completion of the extended credit facility, Joe Jackson said any attempt by government to bow to pressure and overspend could undermine the economic gains made under the IMF program.
And the risk is not just from within the ruling regime. It's from the public. It's from you and I. The unions say, if things are good, let us feel it in our pocket too. That is the risk. The risk is that even the opposition is crying out, but if you say things are good, why are you not spending? And that is the problem. That's the political risk. Election promises, wage pressures, subsidies. They say, electricity is going up, subsidize it. Fuel is going up, subsidize it. And all the different programs that are political. This is where we should be careful. The important thing is that the government should stay in its space, be prudent with its finances, spend only money that it has, and encourage the private sector to do the investment to create the jobs, to do the investment to grow the economy, to do the investment to keep our cedi stable and interest rates low.
And that was finance expert and chief executive of Delegate Finance, Joe Jackson. Meanwhile, economist Professor Godfred Bopin is urging the government to review Ghana's fiscal rules to create more room for borrowing to finance critical infrastructure, arguing that the country's long-term debt target could constrain economic growth. His call follows the introduction of new fiscal responsibility rules under the Public Financial Management Amendment Act 2025.
The amended law requires government to reduce and maintain public debt at or below 45% of GDP by 2035. It also requires the government to maintain an annual primary surplus of at least 1.5% of GDP to support debt reduction and strengthen fiscal discipline. While government has reaffirmed its commitment to these fiscal targets, Professor Bopkin argues that the debt rule should be reviewed to provide greater fiscal space for investment in roads, energy, education, and other critical infrastructure. He was speaking at a post-media budget forum organized by the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
The 1.5% is in the law, is in the act. So that has to be amended for them to be able to do lower than that. Then also the 45% is in the law. So in order for us to increase that, we also need to what? Amend that. Now we have greater fiscal space, very expensive. How do we utilize that fiscal space for growth enhancing what? Spending, so that for every cedi that we spend, every dollar that we spend, we get the highest what? Value. That is where development will come from.
The president of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Stefan Abbas Miezan, also criticized the government's failure to address the recent rise in fuel prices during the mid-year budget presentation, saying businesses continue to face mounting operating costs.
It was really disappointing, but it is also quite understanding. But it's understanding because of the geopolitics. But notwithstanding, we know that the government is trying to look at we actually refining our own crude, of which Centio and then Tor has been brought on board. We need to actually strengthen that so that at least benefits to the people can be realized.
And that was a report by my colleague Michael Obudu. Before we go, Parliament has approved the Excise Bill 2026, abolishing excise duty on locally manufactured fruit juices in a move expected to make the products more affordable, promote healthier consumption, and support the growth of Ghana's agro-processing industry. The new law also introduces an incentive-based excise tax regime for beer and other beverages, with lower tax rates tied to the use of locally sourced raw materials, while maintaining the mandatory excise tax stamp system to strengthen tax compliance and improve domestic revenue mobilization. Deputy Minister for Finance, Thomas Nyako Ampem, presented a bill in Parliament on Tuesday, July 28, 2026.
The other thing we are seeking to do is to introduce a sliding scale for use of raw materials so that we can encourage the use of local raw materials in the manufacture of beer and other drinks, so that the more raw materials you source locally to produce, the rate of excise duty goes down. That is also being maintained in this bill. We are removing taxes on juices, local juice that are produced here. And so our Blue Skies, a Kumfi juice factory will all be zero rated, and that will bring the prices low, and it will encourage us to shift from the consumption of alcohol to fruit juices because we want to promote good health.
Thomas Nyako Ampem ends Business Daily on 3FM 92.7 with me, Bismarck. Also, for more business stories, please check out our website 3news.com. Urban Blend is next with Black Rasta. Please stay.